Now, with all the stories making the headlines this Sunday night, it's the ITV News.
The first steps to freedom for civilians trapped underground by the war in Ukraine. 100 people finally escaped the steelworks in Mariupol, where they've been under bombardment for weeks. Also ahead, the House of Commons Speaker calls for urgent and radical reform to clean up Westminster, as another MP describes being sexually harassed by his colleagues.
I know from my own experience that, when I first arrived in Parliament, there were several MPs who felt entitled to be able to touch me up.
Plant a tree for the Jubilee. Prince Charles plans to protect our woodland. Battle.
This is ITV News with Geraint Vincent.
Good evening. After weeks trapped underground, a group of civilians from the ruined city of Mariupol are finally free from the relentless Russian bombardment. They were among those sheltering in a steelworks, the last redoubt of the Ukrainian defenders, surrounded by Russian soldiers. During an all-too-brief ceasefire, children, their mothers and some elderly people were led out of their makeshift bunkers and away from the battleground. Our correspondent Rebecca Barry reports from Lviv.
Emerging from the darkness, they're helped step by step from their subterranean hiding place. Entombed for weeks, cut off from the world, their distorted city no longer recognisable. The elderly, women and children among those finally rescued from Mariupol. But what must the young make of the world they've witnessed so far? These are the horrors some have endured. At the Azovstal steel plant, around 1,000 civilians and 2,000 Ukrainian fighters have been hiding in bunkers, food, water and medicine running out. But tonight, a rare moment of positive news for President Zelensky, who said not a day had gone by when they hadn't tried to find a solution to save their people. Now, finally, they can walk free. After weeks of negotiations, nobody wanted to jeopardise this operation and the safety of the evacuees. The Ukrainian authorities say 100 people have been rescued so far, supported by the UN and the Red Cross. Earlier in the capital, Kyiv, another show of international support. US Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, the latest politician to pay a visit. But the Kremlin more than hinted at its view of the West's involvement in this conflict, releasing this footage apparently showing missiles destroying weapons supplied by the US and Europe. Today, Ukraine remembers its dead. People visit cemeteries. But this year, there are too many fresh graves. Too much grief. Rebecca Barry, ITV News, Lviv.
The House of Commons Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, is calling for radical and urgent changes in Westminster. It follows cases of bullying and abuse of staff and the resignation of a Conservative MP who was caught watching porn on his phone in the Commons chamber. Tonight, Labour's Chris Bryant has made more allegations, describing how he also suffered sexual harassment in the division lobbies. Our political correspondent, Libby Vina, has this report.
Steeped in tradition, but is it also mired in murky and abusive behaviour? The Speaker today said change in how MPs work was needed, as one senior backbencher spoke out about his own experience.
There have been lots of instances of groping, sexually inappropriate behaviour, all of that kind of stuff on the parliamentary estate. I know from my own experience that, when I first arrived in Parliament, there were several MPs who felt entitled just to be able to touch me up in the division lobby. And I dealt with it in my own way. But I knew that I and others knew that because of the system of patronage and power that happens in Parliament, it's much more difficult to report about somebody who's in a senior position.
Yesterday, this MP quit after admitting watching porn while waiting to vote in the Commons chamber. There is an independent complaints procedure, but the Speaker wants other reforms, saying, "I believe it is time we reviewed our working practices, and particularly whether it's right that MPs are the employers of their staff. In my opinion, it is time to consider radical action." Oliver Dowden, the Tory party chairman, has also intervened, saying he wants equal numbers of women and men sitting as MPs. After the last election, just a quarter of Conservative MPs were women. For Labour, the figure's more than half, but not all the Cabinet agree.
I'd like to see more women involved in Parliament. I'd like to see people from more diverse backgrounds. I've never been someone who has sought to impose quotas. I'm from an ethnic minority
Party chairman
background.
seems to think that's a good idea.
Well, that's up to him.
The Lib Dem leader says a culture change at Westminster is long overdue.
My worry, actually, is that women and girls are going to be put off going into politics, and that is going to damage our country, ultimately. We need the best talent there.
The question now, will Neil Parish's downfall be the trigger for real change in Parliament?
And all of this happening, Libby, with local elections just a few days away now.
Yes, well, I think this is an issue that affects all parties, but it has been a particularly difficult week for the government, with Tory women MPs, including ministers, queuing up to talk about the abuse that they have suffered. And this isn't just a question of wandering hands at Westminster. The fact is that 2 Conservative MPs have actually been jailed during this Parliament for sex offences. Now, Oliver Dowden did try and change the subject, move things on, saying he wanted to see a 50-50 gender balance on the Conservative benches, but that is a long-term aspiration. And in the meantime, I think that the Prime Minister and others in his cabinet are merely having to cross their fingers and hope no more scandals emerge.
OK, Libby, many thanks. A body found in the search for a missing woman from Burnley has been confirmed as Katie Kenyon. Lancashire police also confirmed the 33-year-old's death was caused by head injuries. The mother of 2 was last seen last Friday. A 50-year-old man has been charged with her murder. Prince Charles has called for everyone to do more to protect the UK's ancient woodlands and trees. He made the plea as he launched a new project to mark the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. Helen Keenan has the details.
The crown jewels of our countryside granted special royal status. 70 of the most significant selected as part of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations. And a campaign to protect them launched by Prince Charles today, a tree selected for every year of his mother's reign.
Trees and woodlands have a profound significance for us all. Their steadfast and reassuring presence, a reminder of our long-serving sovereign and her enduring dedication.
Who's going to come first?
Some are here in the 500-acre wood in Sussex, best known as the inspiration behind Winnie the Pooh's home.
The location of the trees were chosen to reflect a range of themes: royalty, history, and in the case of the 500-acre wood, literature.
It forms part of the Queen's Green Canopy project to preserve these natural treasures.
So we're going to be planting trees, we're going to be preserving what we do have, but also celebrating them and getting people to realise if they improve their wellness, their mental health, their heart, their lungs, their bodies, get out amongst the trees like we are both now.
The Prince of Wales sees our green spaces as important for the future as they were for the past, and his message getting through to all generations.
It helps the nature grow their life.
Getting back to nature is just something that should be really important these days.
In the words of Winnie the Pooh and friends, a little consideration makes all the difference. The hope is we'll extend that same sentiment to the environment around us. Helen Keenan, ITV News.
And finally, the Premier League's relegation battle was stepped up today after Everton secured an unexpected 1-0 victory against Chelsea. They're now just 2 points behind Leeds and Burnley, with one of those 3 likely to go down. Chris Scudder watched the action.
Well, Andy, no Everton player. The last time Everton were not in English football's top division, the Queen was just 2 years into her long reign. After nearly 7 decades at the top, they will not be going. A potentially priceless gift.
It's a really important one. Given away though by Spiliqueta, Richarlison! A gigantic goal!
Goodison and Everton somehow survived this. Both posts and a sensational save from England's Jordan Pickford. And that 68-year hold on top-flight status is not over yet. For Scudder, ITV News.
And that is all from us for now, from everyone on the weekend team. Good night.
The warm weather.